Hello everyone, welcome to another video. Today I want to show you how to do a bit of spring house cleaning in our Azure environment. Especially how we can clean up orphaned rule assignments in our subscriptions. So the plan for today is, first I'm going to give you a quick introduction of what I mean with this, what the consequences of orphaned resources can be, and then we move over to the terminal. So I show you how you can use the Azure CLI and also Azure PowerShell. And in the end, we're going to create an Azure automation workbook with which we can automatically clean up orphaned resources. I do a lot of demos. This means I create resources, I delete them, that's no problem. But if I assign permissions to match identities and then delete the match identity, then I also have this orphaned role assignments. As you can see on the screenshot, over the years, they just accumulate and it looks like a big mess in my subscription now. Also, if you have a big team and you create the resources, delete them, it might also look like this. So it's a great idea to have some house cleaning, especially if you automate it. And the reason why you want to do is, there's no major reason to do it. There are just a couple minor ones. So the first one is to reduce the attack surface. In theory, Entra gives out a unique ID per rule assignment. But if you have many rule assignments, it is in theory possible that you get an ID that has been used in the past, and therefore the user or managed identity gets the permission. Then having the identity overlap is basically what I just said before, except that it just gives a legit user too many permissions. With the reducing attack surface from the first bullet point, it's giving an attacker a possible entryway. Then we also have a limit for role assignments per subscription. Right now, we can have up to 4,000 assignments per subscription. It is a lot, but if you have a big team and if you delete match identities but keep the permissions or role assignments there, it is possible to run into this limit. So cleaning up, again, not a bad idea. Another reason why to do it, it's very minor, but if you have like thousands of role assignments, the API or the portal has to load, it just takes a little bit longer. It's not a big deal, but a bit of an inconvenience. And lastly, from what I've heard auditors say is, if they open a subscription and they see a lot of orphaned resources, it's a red flag for them. And it gives them the indication that you're not having a full mature process of managing your subscription, and also indicates that there might be other problems. So with this said, now let's switch over to the terminal and let's get started with the demo. Alright, here in the terminal, first I want to show you how we can use the Azure CLI to list all our orphaned role assignments in case you want to just check locally on your machine. After this, we switch over to Azure PowerShell because we can't use the Azure CLI well in the Azure automation workbooks. So we're using, for the first time on the channel, Azure PowerShell. So let me paste the command for the Azure CLI. So we do an AC role assignment list for the scope all. This means for the entire subscription. And then we query all the entries that have the display name equals null or the signing name equals null. There are different options you can find out role assignments that don't exist anymore. For me, that's the one that worked best. Because if you have, for example, a matched identity, then you delete this one and you take a look at the role assignment, you can see that the display or signing name is null because the object doesn't exist anymore. If you execute this, we'll get a long list of all the role assignments that have been orphaned. The screenshot you saw at the beginning was just like half of it, I think. So you can see here the list, and if you scroll up, you can see it's really extensive. But now let's switch over to Azure PowerShell. So since it's the first time I'm using it on my channel, let's install it first. We say install module, the name is AC, and the scope is for the current user. The first time we execute this, it will take half a minute, I would guess, to install. Then it also asks us if you want to trust this repository. So I trust all of them, and then it should be installed. So I stopped the video because my download was quite slow, but after around 1 minute the PowerShell module has been installed. Next, we can now log in. First, I use the AC login off screen, but since we just installed Azure PowerShell, we have to log in first. What I like to do is use my browser for the authentication. By default, if you just do a login, it will open the Windows Password Manager or whatever it's called. But I prefer the browser. So to configure using the browser, I do the update AC config command. And I set the enable login by VM to false. Once you set this and you do a connect AC account, then the browser will open and you just log in the browser. And once you have done this, your Azure PowerShell will be logged in as well. So you can see I have here my account. I logged in before, so I don't have to enter password or anything. And we can see I'm logged in and my subscription has been selected already. Now we can do a get AC rule assignment to get all the orphaned rule assignments. So let me paste the command here and we're gonna take a look. So we do a get AC rule assignment, but since it's PowerShell, we can do a lot more with the objects we get. Here you can say where the object is a string that's null or white space for the display name, and the second object is also a string, is null or white space for the sign-in name. This means if the display name and the sign-in name is either null or empty, then we'll get the object. So if I execute this, it takes a couple seconds and then we'll get the same list as we had before in the Azure CLI. Except now we have it in this orphaned rule assignments object, which is a list. So we can do operations on this list. The simplest operation would be just to select the object. This means we select all the objects and then we display a couple information like the role definition name and the scope. So when we execute this, we can see here we have a whole bunch of contributors, some also down here. Monitoring reader, log analytics reader for my EKS monitoring demo, and then a couple others. One thing that's interesting is we also have here one reader role and we have a different scope. I think that this reader role is set to the management group. This means it's above the subscription and we might get an error message later when we delete it, but we'll see when we're there. For now, we can just see we have a whole bunch of rule assignments that have been orphaned and it would be nice to clean them up. And to do this, we are going to create an Azure automation account, and inside this automation account, we're going to create a workbook, and then we just run this workbook either once, or you can run it on a schedule like daily or monthly. So let's get started with this. First, we're going to define a couple of variables. So that's the location, the resource group name, and the automation account name, which we're going to set up, and also the subscription ID. So this allows you to follow the code. If you want to just copy paste it, you don't have to change anything, except maybe the location to a closer one. But if you just copy paste it, it will work. I forgot to mention before, as always, all the demo slides and code will be in the description down below, so you can just download it from GitHub. Now, with that said, let's create a new resource group, and we're going to deploy everything inside this resource group, which will also allow us to just delete the resource group afterwards, and everything will be cleaned up. Next up, we're going to create our automation account. So what's important is we set the resource group we just created, then the name of the account, and the SKU. So here we have the free and the basic option. With the free option, you get 500 execution minutes per subscription per month for free. That's plenty, especially for the demo, so I'm using the free one. The account has been created already. It only takes a couple seconds, but now we have to update it and create or enable the system assigned managed identity. Unfortunately, with the Azure CLI, you can't do this while creating the account. So we have to do an AC resource update. Then we say what's resource, so the resource group name and the resource name. Then also the type. Here you say it's an automation account, and then what you want to do. So here we want to set the identity type to system assigned. This is necessary because our automation account needs the permission on the subscription to delete the role assignments. Without these permissions, the workbook wouldn't be able to execute the delete command. Now we have to get the ID of this match identity. So we do an AC resource show, basically the same commands as before, except here we do a query for the identity principal ID. Once we execute this, we will see here in the variable the ID of our matched identity. We're going to need this in the next command because we want to do the role assignment for the matched identity with the ID we just got. For the role-based access control administrator, this role can create and delete role assignments, and then we set the scope to subscription. So our automation account can only delete role assignments on my subscription. You could also set it to a management group if you want to have it for an entire tenant, but for the demo, let's just do it on the subscription. And that's everything we have to set up. Now we're going to switch over to the Azure portal. I'm going to show you what we just created, and then we're gonna create the workbook there. Here in the Azure portal, let me refresh my resource groups, and we'll see here our new resource group, which we just created. If you open this, then we can see we have here one automation account, and if we open that, we can see we have an empty automation account. So now we're going to create our first runbook by clicking on Runbooks. Then we create a runbook. Here we provide a name, for example, role assignment cleanup workbook, or runbook actually. Then what type? So here you can see we can have different programming languages. We are going to use PowerShell today. Then what runtime version? I'm going to use the newest one, 7.2, and you can provide a description, which we don't need for now. Then we're going to create this. It should only take a couple seconds. And now we have here our runbook. Usually you would probably edit it in Visual Studio, Visual Studio Code, whatever IDE you're using. Then you create a pull request, and then it will be automatically deployed. For now, to keep it simple, just let's use the Azure portal. So you can see we have here our empty runbook, and let me copy the code in there. So it's basically the same as we did before, except what's different now is the last parameter. Actually, the entire deleting of the role assignment is different, plus this what if command. So what we do here is, first we do a login with the managed identity. Then we get all the orphaned resources. That's exactly the same command as before. And then we do a for each on the list of orphaned resources, and we remove them. Right now I have here this what if parameter, and as the name suggests, it's just a what would happen if you run this. So that's great for testing because we don't delete anything yet. To test this, we can just save it, and then we have here this test pane. If we click on it, then you can configure a couple of parameters. Since we have such a basic script, there's nothing to configure right now, and we can start this. Now the runbook will run. It usually takes a couple minutes, so I'm going to stop the video here and we'll continue once the test is finished. The test of the runbook is finished, and here you can see the output. If you zoom in a bit, it just says removing orphaned assignment, and then what assignment it will remove. This is a great time for you to check if these IDs of the role assignments are actually orphaned ones, just to make sure that you don't mess up anything. I did this before already, and all of them are good to go, which means our script is now ready to be executed the first time. So let's go back to our runbook. What we're going to change now is we remove this what if to force. So we're just going to force the deletion. We're going to save it. Then we're going to publish it. And from now on, it can be ran in a normal way. Here we have different options. So on top, we can just say start. Then we would execute it just once. But you can also create schedules down here. Schedules would make sense, I think, to run once a month, a week, a day, whatever you want. But you configure it and then it will run all the time. Another example for a schedule would be to clean up all the accounts. To do this, we just add a new schedule. Then we again create a new schedule. Then we can say, for example, weekly schedule. When we want to start, what time, we can set it to recurring. We can also set it to once. For example, if you want to run it tonight at 2 a.m. because we know our environment is not going to be busy, we're not going to disrupt anyone. But if we set it to recurring, we can say, for example, every week, we want to run it on Saturday, and the time 10:54 p.m. is a good time. It's an odd number, so it's unlikely that something else is running at this time, and that's good. We don't need an expiration down here, so it will just run forever. We create this. Then you can also check the parameter. Since we don't have anything configured there, we don't have to configure anything here. And then we can click on OK. And now our runbook is scheduled. So if you refresh this page, we should see it here. So you can see it will run every week on Eastern time zone. This means Toronto, New York at 10:54 p.m. And it will run the first time on the 11th of April. So Monday. But for now, let's just go to Runbook. Actually not here, and we just started. So now our Runbook is running. It's again gonna take a couple minutes and then we'll see the output. And after this is finished, we'll check if all the orphaned resources are gone and if you got any error messages. So I'm going to stop the video here, and once the job is finished, we're gonna take a look at the result. So the Runbook ran. We can also see the output. Everything looks good. But if you take a look at the errors, we can see a lot of errors. And I also checked the subscription. So all the orphaned resources are still there. If you take a look, it also tells us what the error is. A parameter cannot be found that matches parameter name force. So this was an oversight on my part. I thought that the force parameter exists, but it doesn't exist for the remove AC rule assignment. So let's update this, and then we're going to execute it again. So to update an existing workbook, we can just go to the overview, and then usually it opens the runbook automatically. If not, we can click on edit. So what we do here is we just remove this force parameter, then we save it, and we're going to publish it. After we did this, we're going to run it again. So let's click on start. And now let's hope it's gonna work. So I'm going to stop the video again, and we'll see after the runbook is finished if it actually worked this time or not. The runbook's finished successfully, but I really messed this up, and we will see in 1 minute. I was thinking or debating with myself if I should just cut this part or leave it in the video, but I think it's important that I will leave it in the video to give you a warning that if you don't test it properly, if you don't have all the guardrails in place, you can really mess this up. So what happened? Now if you take a look here at the output, we can see we have a whole bunch of rule assignments deleted. And it feels like way more rules than what we've seen before. If you take a look at the errors, we can see we have 2 errors. And especially the last one says operation returned an invalid status code forbidden. This seems a bit odd because our managed identity has the permissions and everything should be fine. And we also got this error message only once, not several times. So something clearly happened. To figure out what happened, let's switch over to our subscription, to the access control. And now let's take a look at what rules we have left. If you open this, we can see there are not a single rule assignment left on the subscription. We have 2 left because they're inherited from the management group. So the managed identity couldn't delete them, but everything else was deleted. So something clearly went wrong here. And luckily I'm the global administrator, therefore I can give myself access to all my subscriptions. Otherwise I would have locked myself out of my own subscription. So now what happened? Like, we tested the script locally, it worked, I got the right permissions. So what's going on? It's actually quite simple. And also the problem is that I'm the global admin. My user has access to everything. This means I have access to the subscriptions and also to Entra. This means I can look up users and IDs, service principals and so on in Entra. The managed identity doesn't have this permission. With our script, the managed identity gets the rule binding. It checks in Entra, is there a sign-in name or a display name? And Entra says you are not allowed, and the script thinks it's null, therefore it's an orphaned role assignment. So I'm going to delete it. The fix is very easy. All we have to do is give our managed identity the permissions to check in Entra if the role assignment has a display name or sign-in name null. And all we have to do is assign it the directory reader role in Entra. To do this, we go to Entra. So you can see it here on the left side in the favorites, or you can also search for it. Then you go to roles and administrators. And here we see all our roles. So you're going to search for directory. We have here the directory reader role. Then we click on the assignment. And now we're going to just add the assignment. Then we'll run it again and then it should work. Adding the role assignment in the Azure portal is a bit weird because when you open it, it will only give you users. So if you enter the name or the ID of the managed identity, then you will also find this one. So here we have the managed identity. In Entra, it's an enterprise app or application. That's why you see here the type. But I'm going to select it and add this identity. Then I'm going to quickly create a new orphaned role assignments, and then we're going to test the script again. So I got access to my own subscription again. I also created a couple of orphaned role assignments, and now we can test. Just to quickly summarize, with now the directory reader rule, we should be able to delete only the orphaned role assignments. So let's switch over to the subscription and I'll show you what I've prepared so far. Here in the subscription, if you now take a look at the role assignments, we can see we have a whole bunch of unknown. We also see we have here the managed identity for the workbook, which is created under this resource, the same as this reader role for this one group. And then we have my owner role that's on the management group. So if something goes wrong now, my owner role shouldn't be affected. But now let's switch back to the Runbook. Let's close the old one and let's start a new one. So this time it should again log in, but now it gets the role on the Azure subscription as well as the directory reader role. Then it will find, hopefully this time, the right orphaned resources or role assignments and then delete them. So I'm going to stop the video, and once the Runbook is finished, we will see that hopefully it worked this time. The Runbook finished. If you take a quick look, it looks right, but let's switch over to the subscription and let's see what roles we have there. If you go to the role assignments, it looks great. We have here still one unknown, but as you can see, it's on the management group and our managed identity doesn't have permissions there. What's important, we can see here, we have still our demo users group and we also have still the managed identity. This means in this case, we only deleted unknown or orphaned role assignments, but we didn't delete our actual use from the subscription. And this is how it should have been in the first place. This is everything I want to show you today. So for the first time, I'm using Azure PowerShell to get some orphaned role assignments. This means role assignments that are still there even though the user or managed identity don't exist anymore. Then we ran an Azure Automation workbook, which was supposed to delete only the orphaned role assignments, but due to the lack of permissions in Entra, the script deleted all the role assignments of the subscription. So this was clearly a mistake on my side. I could have tested it better. I could have more guardrails, more checks. But I left it in the video just to show you that you have to be careful, especially with automation and especially with deleting stuff in your subscriptions. So for me, it's not a problem. I'm the administrator. I can get access back. I just have to check what pipelines I deleted, give them permissions, and everything will be fine. So I would recommend that if you automate stuff like this, do it on a test subscription where you can't break anything. But in the end, all we needed was the automation account with the permission on the subscription and also with the permission in Entra. This means we assigned the directory reader role, and after this, it worked as we wanted. We can run the script on a schedule, like daily, weekly, monthly, whatever you want, or you can just run it whenever we need it. So that's the way I will go probably. So after a couple weeks and a couple demos, once I have a couple orphaned resources, I'll just run the script and clean up my subscription. I hope this video was interesting. If you have any questions, let me know down in the comments. I would also appreciate if you could like and share the video. It will help out the channel. And I'll see you next week with another video.